She was 7 months pregnant. She wore her best dress. She drove 40 minutes to her mother-in-law's Sunday lunch, and she was told to use the side entrance. She smiled. She said, of course. She walked to the kitchen table, the overflow table, and she sat alone while 11 people laughed in the next room, including the other woman, sitting in her chair, while her husband stood at the sideboard and did not move. But that was not the moment that changed everything. The moment came 3 minutes later, when Dorothea Harmon, by 62 years old, composed, deliberate, picked up a crystal water pitcher with both hands and poured it, cold water, full pitcher, across the shoulder of a 7 months pregnant woman's best dress in front of 11 witnesses, and then said, without raising her voice, "I think it's time for you to go, Cecily. You've been making a scene since you arrived." She had been sitting alone in the kitchen. Her husband did not move, but someone else did. 19 minutes later, a black car pulled up to that house. A man stepped out, 6'2", dark coat, the kind of calm that only comes from having nothing left to prove. He rang the doorbell. Dorothea Harmon opened the door, expecting an apology. She got Reed Calloway instead, her daughter's billionaire brother. And nothing, not the money, not the family name, not 35 years of running that household like a kingdom, had prepared her for what happened next. Stay with Cecily today, because this story is not just about a woman who was humiliated. It is about the moment a woman finally stops sitting at the kitchen table and builds one of her own. Lesson statement. The most powerful thing a woman can do is stop making herself smaller for people who were never going to make room for her anyway. Story. Meaning Cecily's story is for every woman who has ever smiled and said, of course, when every part of her wanted to say something else entirely. For every woman who sat at the overflow table and told herself it was fine. For every woman who loved someone fully and discovered that full love, given to the wrong person, can quietly cost you everything. Your career, your confidence, your voice, your sense of what you actually deserve. This story does not promise you a billionaire brother. It promises you something more honest than that. It promises you that the moment of clarity will come, that it will arrive in an unexpected room at an unexpected hour in the form of cold water or a locked bathroom or a 4 a.m. hospital corridor, that the moment will be uncomfortable and clarifying and will cost you something you thought you needed. And that on the other side of it, if you walk through it and do not go back, there is a table with your name on it. One you built yourself, with the people who actually chose to stay. If Cecily's story stayed with you, if you found yourself nodding at the kitchen table at the 3 a.m. list, at the moment she finally put the phone down, then you already know why stories like this matter. Leave a comment below and tell us, what was the moment in this story that hit you the hardest? We read every single one. If this is your first time here, hit subscribe, because every week we bring you stories about women who went through the fire and came out carrying something worth keeping. Share this one with someone who needs to hear it today. You know who she is. Send it to her. And if this story gave you something, a little courage, a little clarity, even just the feeling of being understood, tap the like button. It takes 1 second and it helps this story reach the woman who needs it next. We will see you in the next one.
The silverware clinked against fine china. Laughter floated through the hallway. Warm, practiced laughter. The kind that came from people who had known each other for years and had nothing left to prove. And then a voice cut through all of it. Low, deliberate, perfectly modulated. "I assumed Grant told you to use the side entrance today, Cecily. We have a full table." Cecily Harmon stood in the doorway of her mother-in-law's dining room and did not move. She was 7 months pregnant. Her feet ached from the drive over. She was wearing the blue wrap dress that Nora had helped her pick out 2 weeks ago, the one that made her feel, for the first time in a very long time, like herself. Her hands found the door frame, her fingers pressed into the wood, her baby kicked. Once, hard. She had not been told about a full table. Grant's exact words that morning, spoken over coffee, while he scrolled through his phone, had been these. Just Mom and Dad, nothing formal, maybe an hour. The dining room held 11 people. Cecily counted them without meaning to. It was something she had always done. Counted things, counted steps, counted breaths, counted the number of times Dorothea had mentioned that Cicely's cranberry recipe was a lovely effort. 11 times in 4 years. She had counted. There were 11 people in the dining room, and at the far end of the long mahogany table, in the chair Cicely had sat in for 4 years, the chair Dorothea always placed her in because it was closest to the kitchen and so convenient, sat a woman named Sloane Whitfield. Sloane was wearing a cream cashmere sweater. Her dark hair was perfectly arranged. She was looking across the room at Cicely with an expression that was not guilt. It was not embarrassment. It was not even surprise. It was something very close to triumph. Cicely's eyes moved from Sloane to her husband. Grant stood near the sideboard with a glass of sparkling water in his hand, talking to his cousin Warren. He was laughing at something Warren had said. His eyes moved to the doorway. They found Cicely. Something shifted in his face. Not guilt, exactly. More like the particular expression of a man who has been hoping a problem would resolve itself and has just understood that it will not. He did not move. He did not put down his glass. He did not walk toward her. He did not say her name. She thought he knew. She thought, of course he knew. She thought, I drove 40 minutes and wore my good dress, and he knew she would be sitting in my chair. Douglas Harmon rose from his seat at the other end of the table. Grant's father was a gentleman with sad, steady eyes. He had told Cicely once, standing in the driveway after a particularly difficult Easter, that she was a good woman, and he meant it. She had carried that sentence with her for 2 years. Cicely, sweetheart, Douglas said. Come in. Let me find you a proper... She's fine where she is, Douglas. Dorothea's voice was not unkind. That was the thing about Dorothea. She was never unkind in a way you could point to directly. Cicely, we've set up the kitchen table for overflow seating. You'll be much more comfortable. Less noise. Better for the baby. Better for the baby. Cicely looked at the kitchen table, comment from every angle, the way she always did with Dorothea's statements. She looked for the interpretation that was generous. She always tried to find the generous interpretation first. She could not find one today. She smiled. She said, of course. She walked toward the kitchen. She counted her steps. 1, 2, 3, 4. She did not let herself cry until she had rounded the corner and was standing beside the refrigerator with one hand pressed flat against its cool white surface. 3 breaths in, 3 breaths out. The kitchen smelled like Dorothea's roast. It would be perfect. Everything Dorothea made was perfect. Cicely had never been able to make a roast. This fact had been mentioned gently and without malice 11 times in 4 years of marriage. She had counted that too. She sat down at the kitchen table. It was a small table, a work table, really. The kind of surface used for sorting mail and leaving grocery lists. There was a single place setting. 1 plate, 1 glass of water, 1 set of silverware. Someone had set it up before she arrived. Someone had anticipated that she would be here, alone, at this table. This had been planned. Her baby kicked again, a slow, rolling movement this time, as if asking a question. Cicely put both hands on her belly. I know, she said quietly. I know. She reached for her phone, opened it, stared at the screen, closed it, opened it again. There was nothing useful to do with her phone right now. She had no words for what she had just walked into. Not yet. She set it face down on the table. Through the pass-through window above the kitchen counter, the sounds of the dining room filtered through. The clink of glasses, the particular warmth of people who belonged to each other, eating and laughing and passing dishes around a table. She had sat at that table for 4 years. She had brought the right wine. She had complimented the centerpieces. She had laughed at the right moments and been quiet at the other moments, and always taken up exactly as much space as she was given, and not 1 inch more. She thought about the promotion she had been offered the year before she and Grant relocated. Assistant principal, a role she had wanted since her second year of teaching. She had turned it down because Grant's firm was moving cities, and she had thought, we are a team. Couples make decisions together. She thought about that decision now, alone at the kitchen table, with the smell of a perfect roast in the air. She picked up her water glass and held it with both hands and breathed. The pass-through window was open a crack, and then floating through that crack came Dorothea's voice, bright, warm, the voice she used for people she had chosen. Sloane, I want you to know, whatever happens, you will always have a place at this table. Whatever happens. Cicely set her water glass down very carefully. Her hand was shaking. Whatever happens. She stared at the single place setting in front of her. One plate, one glass, one set of silverware. Whatever happens. She understood now that she had not been placed at the kitchen table because it was quieter. She had been placed here because Dorothea had already decided what happened next. And whatever that was, it did not include Cicely sitting at the family table. The baby was very still. Cicely pressed her hand flat against her belly and waited. The kitchen door opened. The hinge made its familiar sound. A soft catch and release that Cicely had heard dozens of times in this house. She knew, without looking, that it was Grant. She knew by the particular way the air in the room shifted when he entered a space. Cicely. His voice was low and careful. It was the voice he used when he was managing something, rather than speaking to it. Can we not do this today? She had not said a single word since walking into the kitchen. She had simply been sitting. She looked at him now. He was still holding his glass of sparkling water. I didn't know she'd be here, he said. Cicely could always tell when Grant was lying. Not through the large things. He was careful with the large things. She could tell through the small ones. The slight upward pitch at the end of a statement, as if it were a question he was hoping she would answer for him. The way his eyes moved to her forehead instead of her eyes when he was uncertain. He was looking at her forehead now. She asked her first question quietly. How long has Sloane been coming to your mother's house? Grant's jaw moved. He shifted his weight. It's a work situation. Mom invited the whole team for... The whole team, Cicely said. How many people from your team are sitting at that table right now? Silence. One, Cicely said. Just her. How long, Grant? He was quiet for a moment, that stretched too long. Since August, he said. Cicely did not react. She did the math without wanting to, without being able to stop herself. August. It was now the second week of March. 7 months. Sloane Whitfield had been a welcome guest in Dorothea Harmon's home for 7 months. The same 7 months that Cicely had been pregnant. She had been to this house 14 times in that period. She had sat at the kitchen table twice before. Overflow seating, Dorothea had said both times. How convenient, Cicely had thought both times, and had set it aside. She had not set aside the right things. Does your mother know? Cicely asked. About you and Sloane? Grant was very still. There's nothing to know. That isn't what I asked you. The silence this time was longer, heavier. It had weight and texture. Cicely sat inside it and read it the way she had always been able to read a room. She had been a teacher for 6 years. She knew exactly what a silence that long and that weighted meant. Dorothea knew. Dorothea had always known, and the kitchen table had never been overflow seating. It had been containment, a place to put the inconvenient wife while the preferred woman sat at the family table and heard Dorothea say, "You will always have a place here." Cicely said it quietly, almost to herself, a statement of fact, not an accusation. "I'm not crazy. I know what I saw." Grant flinched. She looked at him carefully. At this man she had married 4 years ago in a garden in June, with her mother crying in the front row and Nora standing beside her in a yellow dress. At this man who had proposed on a rooftop and held her hand through her father's surgery and told her why once, only once, but she had saved it. That she was the only thing in his life he was completely certain of. She wondered when he had stopped being certain. She wondered if she had ever known. "Why didn't you tell me she would be here?" Cicely asked. I... He stopped, started again. "I thought it would be fine." "You thought it would be fine, Cicely." "You thought it would be fine," she said again, not angry, just clarifying. "You thought I would come to your mother's house, find Sloane sitting in my chair, and it would be fine." He looked at her forehead. She thought about December. She had found a text on his phone. She had not been looking. She had picked up the wrong phone by mistake, reaching across the nightstand in the dark. The message had been brief, a restaurant name, a time, a single kiss emoji. She had set the phone down and lain in the dark for a long time. In the morning, she had asked him about it. He had said it was a work dinner, a client thing that Sloane had organized. He had said it the way he said things that were true, without the upward pitch, without the forehead glance. She had believed him because she had needed to. Now she understood that she had needed to because the alternative, sitting in the kitchen of this understanding, at 7 months pregnant, was something she had not been ready for in December. She was not sure she was ready now, but she had no choice about it anymore. "Did your mother invite her today specifically because I was coming?" Cicely asked. Grant's silence answered her. Her phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at it. "Nora, you went quiet? And that is never a good sign. Do I need to drive over there? Because I will absolutely drive over there right now." Almost. She almost smiled. She was typing a reply, "I am fine," when the sound reached her through the pass-through window and the half-open kitchen door simultaneously. Not a crash, not a scream, a deliberate, unmistakable splash of liquid. And then Douglas Harmon's voice, sharp, pained, entirely unlike him. "Dorothea, that is enough." And then silence, a different silence than before, stunned and electric. Cicely was already moving toward the door. It had started because Cicely went back. She had heard her name from Douglas. She had heard the sharp silence that followed his voice, the silence of 11 people holding their breath. And something in her, something that had been accommodating and careful and grateful for 4 years, had made a quiet decision. She was not going to sit in the kitchen anymore. She pushed open the kitchen door and walked back into the dining room. Sloane had apparently been speaking when Cicely entered, speaking about the nursery, about the color Cicely and Grant had chosen for the walls, a pale green, barely a whisper of color, and the crib they had ordered. Details that Sloane should not have known. Details that could only have come from Grant. The room went quiet when Cicely appeared in the doorway. Dorothea was already on her feet. Later, Cicely would try to remember exactly what she had been looking at in the half-second before it happened. She thought it might have been Grant's face. She thought she might have been watching to see if he would finally move, finally cross the room, finally put himself between his mother and his wife. The way she had needed him to do 100 times, and he never had. She did not get to find out, because Dorothea reached across the table. She picked up the crystal water pitcher. Both hands, deliberate, steady. She poured it, not accidentally, Not in a moment of lost control. She poured it the way she did everything, with complete composure and absolute intention. A long, unhurried arc of cold water that hit Cicely's left shoulder and ran down across her chest and soaked through the blue wrap dress from shoulder to hip. The room went silent. Not the electric silence from moments before. A different kind. Stunned down to the bone. The water was very cold. Cicely stood completely still. She felt the cold spread across her skin. She felt her dress cling to her, heavy and wet. She felt the baby move, a sharp, startled kick, the kind her daughter made when something sudden happened nearby. She stood still and felt all of these things and did not speak. Dorothea set the empty pitcher down on the table. With a small, precise click. "I think it's time for you to go, Cicely," she said. Her voice was unhurried, regretful, almost, as if she were commenting on the weather. "You've been making a scene since you arrived." Making a scene. She had been sitting alone in the kitchen. Grant had not moved. He was standing in exactly the same position he had been in when she first walked through the front door, glass in hand, feet planted, eyes on her with that expression she now recognized completely, the expression of a man watching the consequences of his choices arrive and finding that he is not equipped to meet them. Douglas was on his feet. His face had gone gray and strange. He looked like a man who had just watched something he could never explain away. Sloane was very still. She was not looking at Dorothea. She was looking at Cicely. And her expression, Cicely would think about this later, was not triumph. It was not satisfaction. It was something that looked, from across a table of shocked and silent people, very much like shame. Cicely looked around the room, and then she laughed. It came up from somewhere unexpected, not hysterical, not broken. The particular laugh of someone who has just received a piece of information they needed and cannot believe how long it took to arrive. She turned and walked out of the dining room. She walked through the kitchen. She picked up her purse from the kitchen chair. She always knew where her purse was. Her mother, Caroline, had told her that when she was 17. Always know where your purse is. A woman should always be able to leave. She went to the downstairs bathroom and locked the door. She sat on the edge of the bathtub, fully clothed, soaking wet, 7 months pregnant, sitting on the edge of Dorothea Harmon's bathtub at 2 in the afternoon on a Sunday in March. The bathroom smelled like expensive soap. Sandalwood, something imported from somewhere that cost more than it should have. The tile was cold through her wet dress. She put one hand on her belly. The baby moved again, slow and rolling this time, not startled. A reassuring movement, as if her daughter were saying, "I am here. I am fine. We're okay," Cicely said out loud. To her daughter, to the locked bathroom, to no one. "We're okay?" She sat there and breathed, in and out, in and out. She counted 4 minutes on the clock above the toilet. She let herself have 4 minutes. Then she picked up her phone. 3 missed calls from Nora. She called her back. "Cicely." Nora's voice was already at half alarm. "You went completely silent, and that is... You sound strange. What happened?" "She poured water on me. She... The whole pitcher. I'm in the bathroom. My dress is ruined." There was a silence on Nora's end that was very different from the silences in the dining room. This was the silence of a woman who was deciding between several extremely strong responses and choosing carefully. "I'm calling Reed," Nora said. "No. Nora, please don't. I don't want... Cicely, I can handle this. I just need a minute to... I am calling Reed," Nora said, in the voice that meant she had already decided, and the conversation was a courtesy. "You can be annoyed at me later. I'll accept that." The line clicked. Cicely held her phone and looked at herself in the mirror above the bathroom sink. Her dress was dark with water across the left side. Her hair had stayed mostly dry. Her face was calm. She noted that, with some surprise. She had expected her face to look like how she felt. Wrung out, disarranged, at the end of something. Instead, she looked like a woman who had just been told something she already knew and was now deciding what to do with the information. That was, she thought, exactly what had happened. Her phone rang. Reed. He picked up on the second ring. She heard it before she had time to think about what she was going to say. Cece? One word. Her name, the short version, the childhood version, the version only Reed and Caroline and their father, who had been gone for 3 years now, ever called her, and something in Cicely's chest, the thing that had been clenched very tightly for the past hour, came slightly and carefully loose. Reed, she said. Something happened. I know, he said. She frowned at the mirror. Nora just called you. Not from Nora. She was quiet. I need to tell you something, Reed said. His voice had the particular quality it took on when he was choosing his words with precision. He was always precise. It was the thing that had made him exceptional at business and occasionally difficult as a brother and absolutely reliable in a crisis. I should have told you sooner. I've been waiting for you to be ready. I'm asking you now. Are you ready? Cicely looked at the woman in the mirror. Wet dress, steady eyes. Yes, she said. Reed had known about Sloane for 6 weeks. Not from a private investigator, not from formal channels. Reed had people, quiet, careful people, whose job was to know things. And when Cicely had come home for Thanksgiving, with that particular look that he recognized from when she was 9 years old, and trying not to let anyone know something was wrong, he had started paying attention. He had been building options, he told her. Not a case. Options. For when she wanted them. And if I'd decided to stay, Cicely asked, to try to work through it, then I would have deleted everything, Reed said. And I would never have mentioned any of it. She believed him. She believed him completely. Don't move, he said. I'm 20 minutes away. He was there in 19. Cicely heard the doorbell from inside the bathroom. She heard Dorothea's footsteps in the hallway. The particular sound of her low heels on hardwood, unhurried, authoritative, the walk of a woman in absolute control of her environment. She heard the front door open. She heard Reed's voice. Where's my sister? Cicely unlocked the bathroom door and stepped into the hallway. She could see through to the foyer from where she stood. Reed was in the doorway. He was wearing the dark coat. He had the look on his face that she had seen exactly 3 times in her life. Once, when a boy at school had pushed her into a locker in 6th grade. Once when their father received his diagnosis, and once when she had called Reed at midnight 6 years ago from a parking lot she didn't recognize, and said she didn't know how she'd gotten there. That look meant, I am completely calm, and I am going to handle this. Dorothea had recovered her composure. She stood in the foyer in her Sunday clothes, with her chin at its accustomed elevation. She looked at Reed with the expression she had always used on him, a faint, measured condescension, as if his success were a thing she had graciously chosen to acknowledge without being impressed by. Mr. Calloway? Her voice was gracious, warm, almost. I don't know what Cicely has told you, but this is a family matter, and I'd ask you to respect that. She told me, Reed said, that you poured a pitcher of cold water on her. There was an accident. She is 7 months pregnant. I am fully aware of... Your grandchild, Reed said, is in that woman. The woman you just poured cold water on, in your dining room, in front of 11 people. He paused. I want to be certain we're describing the same event. Dorothea's composure did not crack. It was one of her genuine skills. But something behind her eyes shifted slightly, recalibrated. She was reassessing. Cecily had watched her do this 100 times with other people and had never been able to reassess fast enough in return. Reed could. Reed was already 3 moves ahead. If Cecily would like to... Cecily is coming with me, Reed said. Tonight she'll stay with me. Do you have an objection to that? Grant appeared at the end of the hallway. He had put down his glass. Finally, he stood with his hands at his sides, looking between his mother and his brother-in-law, with the expression of a man who had spent his entire life between 2 forces and had never learned how to be one himself. Reed, he said, I understand you're concerned, but if you'd let me, you let your mother pour cold water on your pregnant wife, Reed said. And then you stood there. The hallway was very quiet. Grant opened his mouth. He closed it. There was nothing to say to that because it was completely true, and everyone in the hallway, including Grant, understood it to be completely true. I'm going to tell you something, Reed said to Dorothea, because I think you don't fully understand what happens next. And I'd like you to understand, not for my sake, for yours. He did not raise his voice. He did not need to. Reed had built a company worth $900 million by understanding exactly how much force any given situation required and applying it with precision. He was applying it now. He explained, briefly and without emotion, that he had a meeting scheduled Monday morning with an attorney named Carter Webb. That Carter Webb was familiar with the financial structure of the Harmon Family Trust. That certain activity over the past 8 months was of particular interest to Carter. That none of this needed to be unpleasant, but that it would be thorough. Dorothea said nothing. Her face said several things she was too controlled to say out loud. Cecily walked toward the front door. She had her purse. She had her keys. She had the card Douglas had pressed into her hand as she passed him in the hallway. She had not looked at it yet. She had her daughter, 7 months along, steady and present beneath her hand. At the door she passed Douglas. He was standing slightly apart from the others, in the shadow of the staircase, with the look of a man watching a slow disaster he had failed to prevent in time. He was not a bad man. She had always known that. He was a man who had made the sustained particular mistake of choosing comfort over courage for 35 years, and who was now living in the consequences of that choice. She did not hate him for it. She understood it. He had given her a card. She would look at it in the car. I'm sorry, Cecily, Douglas said. Quietly, so quietly she almost didn't hear. She touched his arm briefly as she passed. Outside, the March air was cold and sharp against her wet dress. Reed guided her to his car without touching her, close enough to intervene if she stumbled, far enough to give her the dignity of walking on her own. He had always been exactly like that. She got in. He drove. For 3 minutes, he said nothing at all, which was exactly right. He had always given her room first, then, tell me everything, all of it, from the beginning. Cecily looked at the card in her hand. Carter Webb, family attorney, and on the back, in Douglas's handwriting, he's good, he's discreet. Call him. I'm sorry. She put the card in her purse. She looked out the window at the streets moving past. And she started to talk. They were parked outside Reed's building when she stopped. She had been talking for 22 minutes. She knew because she had watched the clock on the dashboard without meaning to, counting the minutes the way she counted everything. Reed had not said a word. He had driven and listened and kept his hands steady on the wheel and his eyes forward, which was how she knew he was furious. When Reed was calm in that particular way, it meant the anger was very deep and very controlled. The car was quiet. How long have you actually known? Reed asked. About Sloane? Cecily looked at her hands in her lap. I found a text in December. His phone. I picked it up by mistake. A restaurant name, a time, a kiss emoji. What did he say when you asked? That it was a work dinner, something Sloane had organized for a client. She paused. He said it the right way, like it was true. You believed him. I believed him because I needed to. She turned that sentence over in her mind. It sounded like weakness when she said it out loud. She knew it wasn't, exactly. She knew it was something more complicated than weakness, something closer to survival. I was 12 weeks pregnant. I had just given up my apartment to move into his house. I had no job. I needed it to be true. Reed nodded once. He did not say anything that would make her feel worse than she already did. He never did. She thought about the flashbacks that had been cycling through her since the bathroom. They came in short, specific clips, not the large, dramatic moments. She had almost none of those, the small ones. The first Christmas with the Harmons, when she had brought Caroline's cranberry recipe, and Dorothea had set it aside without tasting it and said, "We have a system at the holidays." She had laughed it off. She had told Grant in the car on the way home. I think she liked it, actually. She had believed her own reassurance. The baby announcement, the positive test on the bathroom counter, Grant's face when he'd walked in, the pause that had stretched a beat too long, then, huh. Just that. One syllable. And then, I'll call Mom. Not, let's call your mother first. His mother. His news to share. The night she had lain awake in the dark and opened her phone and searched for Sloane's name on Instagram. Scrolled through photos, looked for evidence of something she simultaneously wanted and did not want to find. And then, because she was ashamed of the searching, deleted her browser history afterward, as if her own suspicion was something she needed to hide from herself. She told Reed about the searches. He listened without expression, which meant he was angrier than before. "You've been carrying all of this alone," he said. "I thought if I could just hold it together, get through the pregnancy, get settled, get to a point where I had enough ground under my feet to have the conversation. Cece, I know." She pressed her fingers against the window. The glass was cool. Outside, the afternoon had gone gray. "I deserved better than this." She said it to the window. It was not a dramatic statement. It was simply true. "I've known that for a while. I just didn't know what to do with knowing it." Reed said, "Yes." Nothing else, just that. They went upstairs. Reed's apartment was what she always thought of when she thought of Reed. Expensive without being showy. Slightly sparse because he cared about space. Deeply comfortable in the way that places are comfortable when someone has thought carefully about what comfort actually means. He made tea without asking, chamomile with honey. He had kept it in his apartment since she was 22 and had gone through her own particular crisis then and spent 3 weeks on his couch. She sat on the couch with both hands around the mug. The baby moved. A long, slow, rolling movement across the left side of her belly. Cicely put her hand over the spot and held it. "She's active," she told Reed. He sat in the chair across from her. He looked at her hand on her belly. Something moved across his face, protective and fierce and almost cracked open, that he arranged back into calm. "She takes after her mother," he said. They sat quietly for a while. The city made its sounds 14 floors below. Her phone screen lit up on the cushion beside her. "Grant?" She looked at it. Reed looked at it. She turned it face down without reading the message. "He's asking you to come back," Reed said. "He's asking me to make it easier for him." She looked at her tea. "He has always asked me to make things easier for him. I have always done it. I am very good at it." She set the mug on the coffee table. "I am done being good at it." Reed looked at her for a long moment. "What do you want to do?" he asked. And Cicely, who had not known what she genuinely wanted in 4 years, who had been so busy managing and adjusting and accommodating that her own wants had become a language she had nearly forgotten, sat with the question. She did not rush to fill the silence with an acceptable answer. She just sat with it. And slowly, in the quiet of her brother's apartment, with her tea going cold and her daughter moving steadily beneath her hand, the answer began to take shape. It was 2:47 in the morning. Reed's guest room was dark and still. The city hummed 14 floors below. The sheets were good quality. Reed did not own anything that was not good quality, and the pillow was exactly the right softness, and none of it helped at all. Cicely was awake. She had been awake since 1 o'clock. She knew this because she had been watching the clock on her phone, the way she always did at 1 in the morning, when the thoughts became too loud to ignore. She opened her notes app. She had always made lists, even as a child. Her mother Caroline had done it, and her mother's mother before that. When the world became unmanageable, you wrote down what you knew. You made the facts visible. You looked at them in a row, and you understood which ones you could act on and which ones you simply had to carry. She typed, "Things I know." 1. Grant has been seeing Sloane since at least August. 2. Dorothea knew. She has known for months. She planned around it. 3. I did not know. I suspected. I chose not to look directly. 4. Douglas suspected. He gave me Carter Webb's card. He is not entirely useless. 5. My daughter will be born in approximately 9 weeks. 6. I have no job. I left teaching when we relocated for Grant's career. I have not worked in 14 months. 7. The house is in both our names. I contributed $40,000 of my own savings to the renovation. 8. I love him. I think I love him. Or I love the version of him I believed in. 9. I am not sure which is worse, loving a real man who failed me, or loving a version that never entirely existed. She stared at the list. She thought I was so stupid. Then she stopped herself. She had been stopping herself from that thought all evening, not because it was untrue exactly, but because it was incomplete. She had not been stupid. She had been managed. There was a difference. Stupid implied she had lacked information that was available to her. She had not lacked information. She had been given a very carefully curated version of reality by a man who was very good at curating realities and a mother-in-law who had been managing outcomes for 62 years. She had not been stupid. She had been trusting. She had been willing to believe the best version of the story she was in. She had loved him, and love had made her generous with the benefit of the doubt. She closed the Notes app. She lay in the dark and let herself feel the anger properly, the way she had not been letting herself feel it. Not the hot, reactive anger of the dining room. The other kind. The cold and clarifying kind that came when you finally stopped making excuses for someone and saw the situation plainly. He had known Sloane was going to be at that table. He had let her drive 40 minutes in her good dress. He had stood there. She thought about standing there. She turned it over and examined it from every angle. She had replayed it a dozen times since it happened. Grant with his sparkling water, his feet planted, his expression of a man watching consequences arrive. She had spent 4 years understanding that Grant found conflict profoundly difficult. She had made accommodations for this. She had smoothed things over and avoided escalations, and managed his mother's feelings on his behalf because he struggled to do it himself. She was done managing. She was done managing his mother and his feelings and his comfort and the impression that everything was fine. She was done because she understood now that in the space she had created, by managing all of those things, something else had grown. Something she had not chosen and had not been asked about. She had made herself smaller and smaller and in the space she left, Sloane had arrived. That was the thought that finally cracked something loose. Not anger at Grant, not entirely. Anger at herself, at the patient, careful, accommodating version of herself that had sat at a kitchen table counting the number of times her cranberry recipe had been dismissed, and never once said, "This is not acceptable. I am not going to sit here." Well, she was not going to sit there anymore. At 4 in the morning, she realized she had not felt her daughter move in several hours. She knew this was common. She had read every book. She had 3 apps on her phone, tracking movement patterns, and she knew that nighttime movement slowed, that babies had sleep cycles, that stillness at 4 in the morning was almost never cause for alarm. She lay completely still and waited. 1 minute, 2 minutes, nothing. She pressed her hand flat against her belly. "Hey," she said quietly. "Hey, sweetheart. I need you to move for me." 2 more minutes. She was on her feet before she had consciously decided to stand up. She was in Reed's hallway, with her hand raised to knock on his door, before she had decided to wake him. She had decided to handle this herself. She had decided. And then her hand knocked on the door anyway, because some decisions get made by the body before the mind has time to vote. Reed opened the door in 15 seconds. He was already half awake. She had not even needed to knock hard. She said, "I haven't felt her move. I know it's probably nothing. I know the statistics. I need to go to the hospital." Reed said, "Get your shoes." He had his coat on in 60 seconds. The hospital was quiet at 4:45 in the morning. The fluorescent lights made everything look slightly flattened, slightly unreal. A television in the corner of the waiting area was showing a cooking program with the sound off. A nurse at the reception desk smiled at Cicely with the practiced warmth of someone who had done exactly this way 1,000 times. By 5:10, they were in an exam room. Dr. Claire Oakes arrived at 5:15. She was Cicely's OB and had been since the first appointment. She was a precise, unhurried woman in her 50s who wore her reading glasses on a chain and listened with the full weight of her attention. Cicely had liked her immediately and had never changed her mind. Dr. Oakes did the ultrasound herself. The screen filled with movement. The heartbeat came through, steady, regular, deeply present. 142 beats per minute. "She's fine," Dr. Oakes said. "Look, she's moving beautifully. She may have just shifted position. Her back is against your left side, which can muffle the sensation." Cicely stared at the screen, at the curve of a small spine, at the movement of small hands, at the heartbeat, that steady, reliable 142 beats per minute heartbeat, that knew absolutely nothing about dining rooms and crystal water pitchers and men who stood there. She started crying. She was not entirely sure what she was crying about. The relief, partly. The fear that had sat in her chest for the last hour, now releasing. But also something else. Something larger and more shapeless that had been accumulating for a very long time and had finally found a way out. She cried quietly. The way she cried when she needed to do it without making it a thing. Reed stepped into the hallway. Dr. Oakes sat on the edge of the exam table, beside the chair Cicely was in. She did not say anything immediately. She waited. "I'm sorry," Cicely said after a moment. "I knew she was probably fine. You made the right choice coming in," Dr. Oakes said. "Always. I know the statistics. Statistics aren't particularly comforting at 4 in the morning." Cicely almost laughed. Almost. "Stress," Dr. Oakes said, "is not nothing. It is not minor. Whatever is happening in your life right now, and I'm not asking you to tell me, your body is holding it. Your baby is in a body that is holding it. That matters. I know. I want you to rest. Real rest. Not just lying in the dark, counting what you know. Cicely looked at her. How did you? Because every woman who sits where you're sitting at 5 in the morning has been lying in the dark, counting something. Dr. Oakes stood. What do you actually need, Cicely? Not what should you do. What do you need? The question landed differently than questions usually did. There was no expected answer attached to it. It was simply open, waiting, patient. Cicely thought about it for a long moment. I need to stop being a woman things happen to, she said. Dr. Oakes looked at her, not surprised, not moved to offer a reassuring speech. Just steady, confirmed, certain. Then start, she said. She left to get the discharge paperwork. Reed came back in with 2 cups of hospital coffee. They were terrible. He handed her one without apology. She took it and wrapped both hands around the cup, and they sat in the plastic chairs in the exam room while the hospital did its quiet business around them. She's okay, Reed said. She's okay, Cicely said. They sat for a while. Down the hall, a door opened. A new sound entered the world. The sound of a baby, just arrived, making its first opinions known at volume. Cicely listened to it. Reed looked at the floor. Reed? Yeah. I want to call Carter Webb tomorrow morning. I'll set it up, he said. No drama. No told you so. Just that. They drank their terrible coffee in the quiet of the hospital, while outside the windows, the city slowly began its movement toward morning. The sky changed. Barely. Just a slight shift in the darkness, a suggestion of something coming. Cicely's phone buzzed. She looked at it expecting Grant. It was not Grant. The name on the screen was Sloane Whitfield. She stared at it for a long moment. Reed, beside her, said nothing. He was very carefully not looking at the phone. She opened the message. I think we should talk. Just us. I know you have no reason to agree to that, but there are things you should know that Grant hasn't told you. I'm sorry about tonight. I'm sorry about a lot of things. She read it twice. She showed it to Reed. He read it once. His face gave nothing away. Do I respond? Cicely asked. That, Reed said carefully, is entirely your choice. She looked at the message for another long moment. Then she put the phone in her pocket. She would sleep first. She would talk to Carter. She would think about Sloane. She had spent 4 years making decisions based on what would make things easiest for everyone else. From now on, she was going to think first. 3 days later, a coffee shop on the east side of the city, 12 blocks from Reed's building. Cicely had chosen it specifically, public, neutral, close enough to walk away from quickly if she needed to. She had told Reed where she was going. She had let Nora drive her. Nora was parked outside with her hazard lights on and a large T, and what she described as the energy of a woman prepared to intervene. Sloane was already inside when Cicely arrived. She had taken a table near the back, not hiding. The seat faced the door. She watched Cicely come in. She did not wave. She looked different from the woman at Dorothea's table. The cashmere sweater was gone. She was wearing a plain gray coat that she had not taken off, as if she was not sure she had the right to settle in. There was something under her eyes that had not been there Sunday. The last 3 days had not been kind to her either. Thank you for coming, Sloane said. Cicely sat down across from her. I haven't decided yet if I should have. Fair? Sloane said. The server came. Cicely ordered chamomile tea. Sloane ordered nothing. Say what you came to say, Cicely said. Not unkindly, just directly. She was done arranging herself for other people's comfort. Sloane looked at the table. Then she looked up. Grant told me, she said, that you knew about us. Cicely was quiet. He told me you had an arrangement, that the marriage was over, and you both knew it, and the pregnancy was, he said it was a last attempt that hadn't worked. He said you were fine. He told you I was fine, Cicely said. I know how that sounds. I know exactly how it sounds. I told myself it was true because I wanted it to be. Sloane's hands were flat on the table. She was not performing distress. She was simply in it. I should have asked more questions. I should have, I don't know, looked harder at what I was being told, but I wanted it to be true, so I let myself believe it. Yes, Cicely said. I know what that is. Sloane looked at her. I've been doing the same thing for 4 years, Cicely said. Sloane was quiet for a moment. Then, when you walked into that dining room, and she stopped. I want you to know, I didn't know she was going to do that. I swear to you, I did not know. What did you think she was going to do? I thought she was going to make you feel unwelcome until you got tired and left. That was what I thought was happening. I never thought she would. She stopped again. It doesn't excuse what I've been part of. I know that. Cicely looked at the woman across from her, 27 years old, not a cartoon villain, not a woman who had set out to destroy a marriage for sport, a woman who had believed a story that was told to her by someone very good at telling stories, and who had made choices she was now sitting in the consequences of. She was not going to forgive her today. She was not there yet. She was not sure she would ever arrive at forgiveness in the traditional sense, but she could see her as a person, clearly, without the heat of jealousy distorting the image. You said you had things to tell me, Cicely said. Tell me. Sloane opened her phone. She had screenshots, texts, and emails she had saved the way you save things when some part of you understands you might need them someday. A conversation from October in which Grant had told her explicitly that Cicely was aware of the situation. A message from November describing the pregnancy as complicated and essentially irrelevant to the larger question. A series of messages from January that outlined in detail what Grant expected the future to look like. A future that included Sloane, a future that did not appear to consult Cicely on the matter. She handed the phone to Cicely. Cicely read through the screenshots. She read them carefully. She read them the way she had graded student essays, looking for what was actually there, not what she expected to find. He had lied to both of them. He had told Sloane that Cicely was fine, that Cicely knew, that everything was arranged. He had told Cicely that there was nothing to know. He had managed both stories simultaneously, telling each woman exactly what she needed to hear to remain in place. Not because he was cruel exactly, because he was the particular kind of man who could not bear for anything to be his fault, who would rather construct an elaborate scaffolding of convenient truths than stand in a doorway and be looked at clearly. He used both of us, Cicely said. She said it quietly, not for Sloane, for herself. He told each of us the version that kept us manageable. Sloane said nothing. Do you still love him? Cicely asked. Sloane was quiet for a long moment. I loved a version of him, she said. I don't think that version exists. Somewhere along the way I became invisible, Cicely thought. Even to myself. Not just to him, not just to Dorothea, to myself. Not invisible, Cicely said out loud. Managed. Sloane looked at her. Something passed between them. Not warmth exactly, not friendship, not the easy absolution of a tidy ending. Something more honest than that. A recognition. You can use these, Sloane said, nodding toward the phone. Whatever you need them for, I'll sign whatever I need to sign. Why? Cicely asked. Because it's true, and because... She looked down at the table. Because what she did to you. You were pregnant. You didn't deserve any of it. Cicely picked up her tea. It had gone slightly cold. Neither did you, she said. You deserve to be told the truth. She stood. She put on her coat. She picked up her purse. I'll be in touch through my attorney, she said. About the documentation. Sloane nodded. Cicely walked out. Nora was out of the car before she reached the sidewalk. Well, Nora said, she gave me everything. Everything. Texts, emails, a complete record. Cicely started walking toward the car. He told her I knew. He told her we had an arrangement. Nora was quiet for exactly 2 steps. Then, I'm going to need a moment. Take your moment. I am taking it. She took it. Okay. How are you? Cicely thought about it honestly. Strange and very clear at the same time. Nora unlocked the car. For what it's worth, she said, I never liked him. You were at our wedding. I wore yellow. That is not a thing. No, Nora said, but I wore it. That evening, Reed drove Cicely to Carter Webb's office. Carter was a compact, precise man in his mid-40s with reading glasses he did not need for reading, but used as a prop for thinking. He sat across from Cicely at a conference table and read through Sloane's documentation and Reed's financial records and looked at the card from Douglas. He took off his glasses. He looked at her. Mrs. Harmon, he said, I want you to take a moment to understand what you actually have here. Carter laid it out without drama. The financial records showed a pattern. Over the preceding 8 months, Grant had moved money. Not dramatically, not in large single transfers, but in a sustained trickle through accounts that would not immediately flag on a joint statement. Not illegal, Carter said. But in the context of a divorce proceeding, patterns matter. Patterns tell a story. Sloane's documentation told a different story, or rather, the same story from a different angle. What you have in these messages, Carter said, is a paper trail of explicit misrepresentation. Your husband, to a third party, described your marital status in a way that is fundamentally false. He described your awareness and consent in a way that is demonstrably false. Courts respond to this. He outlined what Cicely was entitled to. The house. A settlement. Child support structured around Grant's demonstrated income, not the version he chose to report. His firm has had a significant year, Carter said. He glanced briefly at Reed. Something passed between them that suggested they had already spoken at considerable length. He'll fight it, Cicely said. His mother will instruct him to fight it, Carter said. Which is a different problem. Dorothea Harmon has no standing in your divorce proceedings. What she has is a lifetime of influence over a man who has never made a consequential decision independently. Our job is to make the cost of fighting sufficiently clear that even she can calculate the math. Cicely nodded. She had expected to feel frightened at this table. She had prepared herself for fear. Instead, she felt the quiet, solid sensation of a decision that had already been made, finding its structure. She was not deciding anything here. She had decided in the hospital at 4 a.m. She was simply building. She moved into an apartment that week. Reed's building, 3 floors below his own unit, which had been sitting empty for 4 months, and which Reed categorically refused to discuss as a favor. It's my building, he said. It's an empty apartment. My niece is going to live 3 floors away from me. That's the end of the conversation. She let him have that. She called Dr. Claire Oakes and rescheduled her remaining prenatal appointments around the new address. She called her health insurance and updated her address. She called 3 moving companies and got quotes. She did all of these things in a single afternoon with a legal pad and a pen and a systematic satisfaction that she had not felt in a very long time. Then she called her mother. Caroline Calloway answered on the second ring from the house in Ohio where Cicely had grown up. Cicely had dreaded this call. Caroline had genuinely liked Grant, not in the way that mothers perform liking a son-in-law, in the actual way. She had said at the wedding, "He's steady, Cicely. Steady is underrated." And she had meant it. But Caroline at 58 had been in the world long enough to know how to hear bad news without making it about herself. She had raised 2 children while working full-time and had buried her husband 3 years ago and had done all of it without once asking to be considered the victim of her own life. She listened to the whole story. When Cicely finished, there was a brief silence. "I'm coming," Caroline said. "Mom, you don't need to." "I'll be there Thursday. I've already looked at flights. Don't argue with a woman who has already bought the ticket." Grant came to the building on a Wednesday. Reed let him up, which Cicely had not expected. She met him in the lobby, 2 chairs near the window by the entrance, where anyone walking through could see them, and where she could stand up and leave at any moment without it being an event. Grant looked like a man who had not been sleeping. He had the specific look of someone who had been hoping that not sleeping would feel like penance, and who was discovering that it mostly just felt like not sleeping. "Can we talk?" he said. "We are talking," she said. He sat down. He said, "I love you." She looked at him. "I know you do," she said. "I believe that completely." He looked momentarily relieved, which she understood. She had not said it to relieve him. "But I've been thinking," she said, "about the kind of love that doesn't protect someone, that loves them and still stands there, that loves them and still manages them and still chooses every single time to take the path of least resistance instead of the path they need." She looked at her hands. "That's a real kind of love. I know it's real. It's just not the kind I can build a life inside of." "Cicely?" "You stood there," she said. "She poured water on me. Our daughter was in me. And you stood there." He had no answer. There was no answer. He knew it, and she could see that he knew it, and this, in some way she had not expected, made her feel neither triumphant nor vindicated. It made her feel tired and clear and ready to stop. "I want you to work with Carter," she said. "I don't want this to become ugly. For her sake." She put her hand on her belly. "But I need you to know it is going to happen. I've made my decision, and it is made." He nodded. He looked at his hands. Then he looked at her. "I'm sorry," he said. I know that isn't enough. I know exactly how insufficient that is. But I am." "I know," she said. She stood up. That night, she was too awake to sleep. Caroline was arriving Thursday. She had 2 weeks before the movers came. She had a conversation with Carter on Friday. She had approximately 112 things that needed to happen in a specific order. She went to the kitchen. She opened every cupboard. She reorganized the entire kitchen at 2 in the morning. All 6 cupboards, the drawer by the stove, the cabinet above the refrigerator, with her belly negotiating the lower shelves, and the city quiet outside the window, and Caroline asleep in the bedroom, and the specific, satisfying sound of things being put in order. She alphabetized the spices. She had never done that before in her life. She did it now, and it was, for some reason, she could not entirely explain, exactly what she needed. She was on the letter M when Reed called. "It's 2 in the morning," she said. "I know. Are you awake?" "I'm alphabetizing spices." A pause. "Of course you are." Another pause. "Dorothea held a luncheon today. Her version of events. 12 of her friends." Cicely set down a jar of marjoram. "I know. She texted me, said she wanted to clear the air. Douglas left after 15 minutes. He called Carter this afternoon." She was quiet. "Douglas called Carter," she repeated. "Apparently he's reached a decision about a number of things. He's willing to provide documentation." Reed paused. "And there's something else. Something you'll want to sit down for. I'm standing. Sit down, Cece." She sat on the kitchen floor, back against the lower cabinet. Spice jars around her. Two of Dorothea's guests were filming the table before it started for a social media account. The camera was running when it happened. Cicely stared at the jar of marjoram in her hand. "It's 19 seconds," Reed said. She watched the video once. 19 seconds. A woman in a blue wrap dress walking into a dining room. A crystal pitcher lifted with both hands. A long, deliberate arc. And then, perfectly audible, over the ambient sound of silverware and conversation, "I think it's time for you to go, Cicely." She handed the phone back to Reed. She sat for a moment with what she felt. She had expected triumph, some version of, "Finally, now everyone will see." What she actually felt was quieter than that. Sober. The particular feeling of someone watching a consequence arrive that they did not engineer and did not need to. "What do I do with it?" she asked. "Nothing," Reed said. "That's the answer. You do nothing. Someone already posted it? Patricia, the woman who filmed it, posted it for her lifestyle account. It reached 47,000 views before she understood what she had. She's trying to delete it. The internet does not delete things." Cicely nodded slowly. She thought about Dorothea. She had spent 4 years trying to understand Dorothea, trying to find the version of their relationship that could work, the version where Cicely adjusted enough, accommodated enough, became small enough that the discomfort between them could resolve. She understood now that she had never been the problem to be solved. She had simply been the obstacle between Dorothea's son and Dorothea's management of her son's life. There was no amount of adjusting that would have changed that. She felt no pleasure in the video's spread. She felt something close to pity, which surprised her. Douglas provided his documentation to Carter the following day. It was significant. Financial records from the Harmon Family Trust showing a series of strategic asset movements over the preceding 8 months. Not criminal, but intentional. A careful, sustained repositioning of resources in anticipation of a divorce that Dorothea had apparently decided was coming long before anyone had said the word out loud. She had been planning for it. While Cicely was attending Sunday lunches and bringing the right wine and sitting at the kitchen table and counting how many times her cranberry recipe had been dismissed, Dorothea had been making sure that as little as possible would transfer to Cicely when it ended. Carter presented the documentation to Grant without Reed's name attached. Grant sat across the conference table and read through it. He was quiet for a long time. "She told me," he said finally, in a voice that sounded genuinely diminished, "that you would leave eventually anyway, that it was only a matter of time," Carter said. "And what did you say?" Grant said nothing. Carter noted this without comment and moved on. Sloane signed the statement Carter had drafted. She did it without hesitation. She sent Cicely a brief message afterward. "I hope it helps." Cicely sent back, "Thank you." That was the last communication between them for a long time. Dorothea called 3 times in the week following the video. Cicely did not answer. She let Carter handle it. Carter was very good at handling things. The formal apology meeting was arranged 2 weeks later. Carter's office, Dorothea and Douglas, Cicely and Reed, Carter present as witness. Dorothea had aged somehow in 3 weeks. Not dramatically, but she sat in the conference chair with slightly less of her accustomed elevation, as if the thing that had always held her upright, the absolute certainty that she was right, that she was above consequence, that the world she had constructed would hold, had developed a crack. She looked at Cicely. She said, "What I did was wrong. I am sorry." It was stiff. It cost her. Cicely could see exactly what it cost her. She did not say, "I forgive you." She was not there yet. She might not arrive there for a long time. She said, "Thank you." Because it was evidence, not of Dorothea's change, she was realistic about that, but of something important. Evidence that the world still contained accountability, that what you did had consequences, that you could not simply move through other people's lives with a crystal water pitcher and complete impunity. That was enough for today. Grant honored every point Carter outlined. He did not fight the House. He did not fight the settlement. He engaged his own attorney, a reasonable man who understood which battles were worth having, and the process moved forward with a thoroughness that surprised Cicely and seemed to relieve Grant, who had perhaps never understood how much of his difficulty came from the sustained effort of managing multiple contradictory truths simultaneously. He was a better man when he wasn't managing. She could see that clearly now. It did not make her want to stay, but she could see it. The baby came on a Tuesday, the 31st of March, 6 weeks after the water incident, 3 weeks after the video had finished its circuit, 2 weeks after the meeting in Carter's office. 7:42 in the morning. Reed was in the waiting room. He had been there since 4 a.m. He had not complained about this even once. Nora was in the waiting room with a tote bag of snacks she had described as waiting room essentials, which appeared to include 2 kinds of chips, a novel she would not read, and an elaborate playlist she had spent 3 days curating. Caroline was in the room. Cicely had asked her. Her mother had driven up 2 days before the due date and had been staying in the apartment below and had not once said, "I told you Grant wasn't right." She had simply been there, making tea, organizing the baby's things, sitting on the couch in the evenings and talking about ordinary things, her garden, a book, the neighbor's new dog, which was, Cicely understood now, its own profound form of love, treating a person as if their life still contained ordinary things, even when it didn't yet. Especially then. Grant was in the waiting room. He came when she sent word through Nora. He stood in the doorway of the room with his hands at his sides and looked at his daughter for the first time. Something broke in his face. Not guilt, not grief, something purely human and overwhelmed that had nothing to do with any of the rest of it. Something that was just, this person exists now. This person is real. This is my daughter. What's her name? He asked. Clara, Cicely said. Clara Caroline Harmon. He nodded once. His jaw was tight. He pressed his lips together. That's a good name, he said. She watched him look at his daughter and thought, he is going to love her. However he failed at being a husband, he is going to love this child. She believed that. She could build a co-parenting relationship on that belief. It would not be easy. It would require more of her than she had given to most things, but she could see the outline of it, a workable thing, shaped around Clara's well-being, with enough distance between the adults to make it possible. She could work with that. She took her daughter home to the apartment 3 floors below Reed's on a Thursday afternoon in April. The apartment smelled like the flowers Carolyn had arranged on the kitchen table before flying home. White tulips. Cicely's favorite, not Cicely's mother-in-law's favorite, her actual favorite. She put Clara in the bassinet in the corner of the bedroom that she had set up herself, with the pale green walls she had chosen herself, with the mobile Reed had ordered that she had not asked him to order and had not protested when it arrived. She sat in the rocking chair beside the bassinet. Outside, the city went about its business. Below, Reed was in his apartment doing whatever Reed did on Thursday afternoons. She could call him by taking 3 steps to the hallway and pressing the button on the intercom, and he would be upstairs in 4 minutes. She knew this without needing to verify it. She was not going to call him right now. She sat in the rocking chair with the afternoon light coming through the window at the particular angle it came through at this hour, and she looked at her daughter, Clara Caroline Harmon, 3 days old, eyes that were still working out what they thought about light and darkness and the business of being in the world. small hands that opened and closed with complete seriousness. 3 weeks later, on a Sunday afternoon, she had people over. Reed from downstairs, who arrived with takeout bags in both arms, and the expression of a man who had ordered extensively and was not apologizing for it. Nora, who came in and immediately sat on the floor. I don't do nice furniture around babies. The anxiety is too much. And took Clara with the specific competence of someone who had spent 3 weeks practicing and was now confident. Caroline, back for the weekend, in the one comfortable chair Cicely had placed near the window, specifically because it had the best light and the best view, and Caroline had driven 4 hours to be here. And Douglas. This had surprised her, but it had also felt, when she thought about it, exactly right. Douglas Harmon had been the first person in that family to extend her something genuine. He had given her Carter's card in the hallway. He had provided his documentation. He had walked out of Dorothea's luncheon after 15 minutes. He was doing the hard, late work of a man who had chosen comfort over courage for 35 years and was now choosing differently. She was not going to penalize that. She was not going to pretend it had been easy or fast enough. But she was also not going to close a door he was trying to come through the right way. He sat in the corner, near the window, with Clara in his arms. He looked at his granddaughter with an expression that was entirely uncomplicated. No management, no agenda, no careful positioning, just an old man looking at a new person and being moved by the fact of her. Clara blinked up at him. She opened and closed one small hand. He pressed his finger into that hand, and she held it. Reed emerged from the kitchen area. Do you want the good takeout or the great takeout? I ordered both, and I'm not going to apologize for that decision. I would like someone to engage with the actual question. Great takeout, Nora said immediately. This is not a real question. Why is this a real question? Because I believe in options, Reed said. Caroline. Nora turned to her. Back me up? Caroline, in her chair by the window. What is great takeout? What does that distinction mean? Is this a restaurant tier thing? Is this a cuisine thing? It's a quality tier thing, Nora said. The great one is the good one, but better. Then obviously the great one, Caroline said. This was never complicated. Cicely laughed. It came up from somewhere deep and real and entirely without effort. Not the laugh of someone who had decided to feel better, the laugh of someone who had actually arrived somewhere and was surprised, genuinely and completely surprised, to find that it felt like this. Warm light through the window, her daughter in her grandfather's arms, her brother arguing with her best friend about takeout tiers, her mother trying to follow a conversation that had left her behind 2 sentences ago. She had thought, in the darkest part of the dark months, that this was what she was losing. The particular warmth of a room full of people who had chosen to be there. She had thought that was the thing she was giving up when she gave up the marriage. She understood now that she had not been in those rooms for a long time. She had been in adjacent rooms, overflow rooms, kitchen tables. This table was hers. Every person at it had chosen to be here. She was not managing anyone's comfort. She was not adjusting her size. She was not counting her steps. She was just here. At 3 in the morning, Clara woke for her feeding. Cicely lifted her in the dark and settled into the rocking chair, and the apartment was quiet around them, in the particular way apartments were quiet at 3 in the morning. Not absence of sound exactly, but the sound of a world briefly pausing. She reached for her phone. Habit. The 3 in the morning reflex that had been with her for 4 years. Lock, unlock. Scroll for something. Search for something. Delete the search. Lock again. She picked up the phone. She held it. She put it down. There was nothing to search. No accounts to scroll. No threads to follow. looking for the things she needed to know and was afraid to find. No history to delete, nothing to manage. There was just this. Clara, feeding, the chair rocking slowly, the city below, the particular sound of deep nighttime, which was not silence, but something richer than silence. The sound of a world that was still there, still moving, still going, in spite of everything. She thought about what she would say to the woman she had been a year ago, standing at the refrigerator in Dorothea's kitchen, with her hand flat on the cool white surface, counting breaths, telling herself she was fine. She would say, "You are not staying because you are weak. You are staying because you love him, and you believe in the promises people made in gardens in June. Those are not failures. Those are the things that make you who you are." But she would also say, "There will be a moment when the cost of staying and the cost of going become the same number. You will recognize that moment. When it arrives, go." She pressed her cheek lightly against the top of Clara's head. The baby smelled like the particular warmth of a new person, like something that had not been in the world 4 weeks ago and was now entirely here. "I thought losing this marriage would unmake me," Cicely thought. "Instead, I found out what I was made of. I am not who I was before Grant. I am not who I was while I was trying to be enough for his family. I am whoever comes next." That part, the comes next part, that was the part no one told you. You assumed starting over meant returning to a former self, going back to before. But you were not the same person you had been before. And the before you imagined no longer existed, and the going back was not possible and was not actually what you wanted. Starting over was not going back. Starting over was arriving somewhere you had never been. She held her daughter in the rocking chair at 3 in the morning in the apartment that was entirely hers and thought, the prison door had been unlocked all along. I just finally walked out. Clara finished eating and settled into sleep against her chest with the complete commitment to rest that only the very new could achieve. As if sleep were a country they had just discovered and they fully intended to stay. Cicely held her. She did not reach for her phone again. She rocked slowly, and the chair made its small sound, and below the city breathed, and somewhere in the building Reed was asleep 3 floors down. And tomorrow there were things to do, attorney calls, and paperwork, and the 100 ordinary tasks of a life being rebuilt. But all of that was tomorrow. Right now there was only this. Her daughter's breathing, the chair, the city. The particular quality of 3 in the morning light, when the sky has not yet decided to become dawn. In Douglas's arms, earlier today, Clara had opened her eyes and looked around the room. She had looked at every face, unhurried, taking inventory, as if she was already assessing the quality of the people she had arrived among. Everyone who mattered had been in that room. Everyone who had chosen to stay. Cicely closed her eyes. She rocked her daughter. She was not afraid of what came next. She was, for the first time in as long as she could remember, simply present in what was here. That was enough. That was, she thought, more than enough. That was everything. Editorial note, closing statement. The content in this story was carefully researched, constructed, and manually edited by our team with the intention of delivering meaning, emotional truth, and genuine value to our audience. Every detail, from the characters to the emotional arc to the lessons woven throughout, was thoughtfully crafted to reflect real experiences that real women navigate every day. We do not use automated generation without human review and intention. This story was built by hand, with care, for you.